Hi, I'm James from Chaosium. I sat down with Mike Mason and we spoke about villains in Call of Cthulhu. What makes a good one and just how evil can they be? I'm going to jump across to that interview in just a moment, but first, remember to subscribe to the Chaosium YouTube channel. It helps us out and it lets us make more content like this. Thanks.
Using important NPCs, main villains, key NPCs, that they are often the lifeblood of the plot, and so the game. So ensuring that you are investing them with, qualities that the players will pick up on can be important. They're not kind of faceless NPCs in the background in this sense, but equally, you've got to kind of understand how they work in the plot to be able to understand how best to present them. Because obviously, if you've got an NPC like a certain character in Beyond the Mountains of Madness, who is known as an NPC, but isn't known as a villain, e.g., they're hidden and they're like potentially like a saboteur, and they're pulling the strings from the background. Obviously, you don't want the PCs to know who they are. You want them to know that there is somebody out there working against them. But the point of the plot is for them to work out who it is. So it's a slow burn mystery, murder mystery in a sense. It's you've got to go through the procedural to identify who it is, and hopefully the players come up with wonderful kind of crazy ideas of how they're going to catch the culprit and identify them, that hopefully fail, because the NPC's intelligent is watching them and overhearing them planning it for a start, so they can every time they can just they can overcome the challenge of the PCs, until the point where you decide that they need to now discover who it is. So at that point they have a secret meeting. The NPC can't overhear them for whatever reason. The PCs have been really good about keeping it secret. Then allows the PCs to then catch the hidden NPC. It works in the plot. For other ones, it's who are more out and open. There's a lot of clear in Masks in Anathotep, particularly. There are NPCs with a big sign above them saying, "I'm a major villain," clearly, because I'm kind of telling you I'm a major villain on what I'm saying. So the trick there is not so much revealing who they are, because some of them are so egotistical and grandiose that they're quite happy to say, "Yes, well, I am the lord of a large cult and I will end the world, and there's nothing you can do to stop it," because that's their power trip. Obviously, what you don't want to do, ideally, is for PC to go, "Oh, really? Oh, bang, you're dead then, we've solved that." So what you want to do is put constraints on them. And that could be as simple as mundane as, the PCs are shackled and chained up and captured when the NPC, gives their reveal. So the PCs can't do anything about it because they physically are restrained. But more subtly and probably more interestingly, there are other ways. Social convention is usually the chain around the PC's trigger finger, because we are dealing with a model of the real world. This is the whole point. This is not Fantasyland, where you can go through villages and towns and dungeons and kill discriminately and loot treasure with no consequences whatsoever. This is a model of the real world where there are consequences. So you go down the street and decide to take out, a Mr. A NPC, then there are things like crime and law and order and murder and all those sort of things that work in pretty much every society in whatever period you're dealing with, that there are consequences to. Now you may attempt it, but obviously there's nothing to stop a nearby bystander, police officer, anyone, the cultists, head cultists, henchman, whatever it is, getting in the way of any bullets or whatever. If should that happen, but hopefully the PCs don't go that far straight away. Hopefully they have the common sense to realize, if we just take this character out without us doing it really cleverly and thinking it through and having a proper plan, the police will just come straight to our door. We will leave evidence. A witness will see us, even if we don't think there are any witnesses. But you're in the middle of London, New York, wherever. that, you know, Cairo, there are millions of people and you don't see them all. And somebody in a window in the darkness is looking down on the street, can see all of you and what you're doing, and they will tell the police. And then you're on the run from the police. So reminding the players and kind of advising them that, you know, you're playing in the middle of a city and there are eyes and sounds and police all around, you know, helps to temper their enthusiasm for, you know, casual slaughter. So, you know, use the constraints of society. You know, there's a key character in London in Masks who is part of the upper crust society. You know, there would be consequences, and there are to just taking him out in the middle of London, certainly. And you know what? If it happens, if the players are lucky and they, you know, you've got a player character who's good with throwing knives, who out of the blue just says, "Oh, I just rolled an extreme success when I saw the major NPC and they've got a knife in their forehead and they are dead." And you go, oh, rubbish, that's my key NPC. Do you know what? With cults, there's always somebody ready to take their place. There's always somebody to take their place. And it wouldn't take very long for, you know, Mr. Key NPC, who's just been killed, you know, by accident, basically, that their, you know, their right-hand woman or man or whoever is now in control. You know, within minutes, let alone hours, somebody, you know, who is in the right place at the right time and who's been waiting for their chance would just impose their control over the cult. You know, they've already got their gang who's on their side waiting in the wings, and suddenly it's a night of the long knives. It takes place over the course of, you know, 6 hours that night. The cult has completely changed its makeup. They're still doing the same thing, the same objective, the same plot device. However, the makeup of the cult is now completely different in terms of who's in control. And the players, what they do, they've just killed. They know who's in control. They now don't know who's in control because they've taken out the one lead they had. And now but they also know they've got a target in their backs because whoever is now taking over the cult knows who killed the old cult leader. So do they come looking for revenge, or do they come to pat them on the back? You did me a favor, you know. So you've suddenly opened up lots of new you know, dramatic consequences. But I mean, again, you've got to roll with what happens. You know, you don't want to kind of constantly frustrate the PCs, but you know, there are ways around it, and there's ways to kind of slow them down a little bit. Of course, if you're playing Pulp, then I just say, just go whatever they want to do it. If they want to take out the cult leader straight away, great. I'll have another cult leader come in straight away. Or I'll use the lookout master rule and, you know, have henchmen diving in front of bullets every round, you know, until their luck runs out. And, you know, so there are ways and means to kind of control that, I guess.
Changing gears for a little bit. Horror in general and Call of Cthulhu in particular has this great relationship with kind of schlock and pulp. Obviously, we've got Pulp Cthulhu. When we're talking about villains, creating these evil, macabre figures, how far is too far for a mustache-twirling villain? Is there a way that you as a keeper can figure out when you have slid off from the sinister into the cartoonish?
Okay, well, if I'm playing Pulp, then obviously I tend to like doing the cartoonish because for me, that's the kind of the heart of these kind of, like, you know, over the top characters, which makes that kind of fun. However, in kind of, you know, regular Call of Cthulhu, where you want to kind of, you know, keep the mood and the atmosphere in that sense. So yeah, you want to sort of draw back from the cartoon depictions to a larger degree. It's a real, there's no answer to this question. If you just, you know, look at how can you present an evil character? I mean, it's a massive spectrum from the kind of the classic kind of, you know, the man in black, you know, who, you know, is always there pulling the strings, clearly, you know, got the sign above his head, I am the villain, to the, you know, to the small innocent child who is, you know, evil hidden in the innocence kind of thing on this scale. And it really comes down to the kind of character that the villain is and how it's presented. And again, it's understanding the plot and working with the plot to present your characters appropriately. So it's it comes down to kind of trying to understand when the best time to kind of reveal the villain would be. You know, is it early on? Is it that the players do it by through their actions? Does the villain kind of reveal themselves by being at the key location at the end? You know, I don't know. It depends on the plot and the style of game you're playing. However, it's just being aware of it and trying to, you know, make the villain seem real. I mean, the ideal is that kind of like, you know, love to hate the villain kind of thing. You love the villain because they're so interesting that they you know, that your portray, you know, this is where your keeping skills kind of come in terms of how you portray the character. And it may be that you know, you use an accent or a voice, but you may not need to do that. It may just be the tone of your voice and the rhythm or the volume, the sound. You know, often, you know, less is more with Sinister. You know, the quietly, slowly spoken NPC villain who's very kind of measured in their phrases, that makes you hang on their words, that because they are in control of the conversation, can often be more potent than the villain who's mad and I'm going to tell you everything and you have betrayed me and crossed me. You know, that works too, but it doesn't work as effectively sometimes as the more measured approach. You know, these people, these NPCs got to their position not because they're stupid most of the time. They get to these positions because they're often more intelligent than their colleagues in the cult. They are great manipulators. They are good with words. They have plans within plans, and they got here through their ingenuity, backstabbing, manipulating of people, and the fact that they have the fact that they are, you know, they don't think like the rest of us because they've got some sort of connection to the mythos in some way that has eroded their sanity, so their brainwaves actually potentially don't work the same way because they're infused with mythos knowledge. So they are different in that sense, and so you can portray them. You know, you've got all manner of ways of portraying them. You know, sometimes I think I've had a villain where, you know, they've got certain things, they're answering the PC's questions and the PCs aren't quite sure that they're the villain yet, but maybe every now and again I'll have the NPC having a dual conversation with somebody who's not in the room. You know, that they think that maybe they're in another dimension and they're viewing them because they can see them, or maybe they're just, you know, they are mad and they're having a conversation with somebody they think is in the room at the same time as the PCs. And if you do it kind of subtly enough to start with, the PCs don't realize that until about halfway through, and then they stop and get like, who's he talking to? Is he talking to us or not? I'm not sure. And then you leave, you get the NPCs to leave, and then the PCs go like, what? But he said, you know, you've dropped a clue in there, obviously, and you know, it makes the MP3 more interesting, and it makes the scene kind of more fun. But you know, it's a device to not only present the NPC, present some clues to the NPC and clues to the plot as well. So there's various ways you can do that kind of thing. You know, you could have somebody deliver a note to the NPC while they're there, and the PCs are trying to make their spot hidden rolls to see it, and maybe they can't read it all, but they just see a word or something that's kind of got a dual meaning or something like that. That can mean, you know, that could be bad, mean they're bad. It could mean they're good. I don't know. And you know, try and throw a few kind of questions in while they're, you know, still kind of figuring it out.
I'm going to ask you a what do you like best question. And I know that these are always tricky. I don't expect an actual critical what is best here answer, more just sort of what is on your mind and what's something that's been percolating in your head. It might be later you can think of a ton. But if I asked you cold now, what, in your opinion, is the best Call of Cthulhu villain, or one of the best from a scenario or campaign of your choice? What immediately springs into your head?
I guess the one I spent a lot of time figuring out was Zara Shafiq from the England chapter of Masks. I'm trying to remember, because I think I kind of had to kind of create her pretty much from scratch. as the kind of second lieutenant in the English cult in that game. And and originally, I think, in terms of how she was written, or maybe he in the original, I can't remember even if the characters in the original mass, it's escaping me at the moment. But in the rework, it would have been very easy just to kind of put a name and say that, you know, she was second in command of the cult, and can step in if Gavigan gets taken out too early, kind of thing. And that would have been fine. It, you know, would leave it there. But it was kind of like thinking, well, actually, it would be really great to kind of try and show that cults aren't well-oiled machines that work like, you know, well, actually work like most real life businesses. Because in most real life businesses, there's a boss and there's bosses, and there's people under them who want to be bosses and such. They want to earn more money. They don't think that, you know, we've all been in positions, and we all know people where they've gone, I hate my boss. They don't know what they're doing. I could do their job far better. And that's real life. So why don't I just apply that to the London cult and say, I hate my boss. I want their job. I could do it so much better. And then extrapolate on that and think about, okay, so Zara, okay, let's have her in cahoots with the Egyptian cult, because the Egyptian cult, you know, they don't like the head of the English cult, because they're too English. They'd rather they had more control. They'd rather it was more, you know, Egyptian control over the, you know, rather it would just be an expansion of the Egyptian cult, to be frank, because who wouldn't want a larger cult around the world rather than your own little one here? So why don't we have the Egyptian cult backing her and kind of egging her on to sort of, you know, to say at some point, you know, we want you to take him out and step up. So that's now giving me a character motivation for that character. You know, she wants to take over the cult. She's being whispered in her ear to do so, but she's not stupid. She didn't get to here by being stupid and reckless. So she's going to wait for her time, and she's going to use the tools and opportunities that are presented to her, which means, the PCs, they are tools in her game, her ambitions that could be used. So that's why, you know, she is presented to say, you know, you can play how you like, but she may come to the PCs and say, I need your help. I'm embroiled in this thing. I'm over my head, and I didn't want to be here, and I didn't realize it was all this evil stuff. I'm, you know, I can't get out. They're going to kill me. I need you to help me and do all the work for me so I can take over the cult in another, you know. So you create some you know, some drama and mystery, you know, with the player characters there, and so I the reason I kind of come back to Zara is I see forums, and you know, people are often writing up there kind of what happened in my maths game or what's going to happen next, and her name always seems to come up, and it's always like, oh, the PCs haven't got a clue, or they, you know, or that, you know, this, and you just know it's going to be great, because, you know, when the reveal happens, the PC can be, oh no, we helped her, or whatever it would be, and you just know it's going to be really cool. And so, and that's kind of why I particularly like that character, because obviously I had a hand in her development in that sense. But there are many others. You know, I do like, you know, the head of the English cult. I like the fact he is, you know, really aloof and really kind of, you know, all of you are worthless, and none of you possibly could ever do anything that could interfere with my plans, because I'm so overconfident. I like that kind of villain too, because it's a real different kind of character to play. And but, you know, there's, you know, many Call of Cthulhu campaigns and scenarios and they've all got their own little kinks and tweaks in terms of, you know, who the villains are, and it's really nice to, you know, be able to kind of explore different types of villains, you know, through different scenarios and campaigns. And that's what, for me, is, you know, one of the things I like about Call of Cthulhu. It's not, you know, it's not the same all the time. It's very different because the characters are very different. And but yeah, I mean, you know, I'm I used to do a bit of acting back in the day, and you know, there's a thing of, you know, in acting that it's always best to play the villain. If you have a choice, you know, you can play the lead hero or you can play the villain. Everyone's going to choose a villain most of the time, unless, you know, unless you're in a Disney and you got, you know, getting paid a lot of money to play the hero. Because villains are just more interesting. They're more fun to play. You can really just have a lot of fun playing a villain, and that's why, you know, they're cool to run as a keeper. You know, they're good fun.